welcome everybody. Welcome to our Women in Accounting live show, our last for 2022. I mentioned before, if you've just joined us, if you've missed out on the whole series, which has been a lot of fun this year, I must admit, we've had a lot of fun and I've had some amazing guests. So thank you to all of our amazing guests that have been on. And today, again, I know it's probably, to be fair, Alicia, I know we mentioned this off air a second ago. It's probably everyone's in wind down mode. Everybody is definitely in drinking mode. That's for sure.
See, I've got a coffee. I need to upgrade to the wine, or maybe like a espresso martini or something. That's what I should have been having.
I should have given you a brief, but yeah, look, we sort of do these I started doing these in lockdown with a glass of wine. And I think we went through this mix of everyone was drinking every single day in lockdown. But I've got a cup of tea, I've got a water, I've got a wine. So if you want to grab something, please grab something before we kick off, because we'll be here for about 50 minutes or so and we'll allow questions as well. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. My name is Paul Jantz, in case you missed everything that we've done. And we're here thanks to Professional Partners Education, which is our education channel for Hall Chadwick and our great supporters at Hall Chadwick, Profit Master, iKeep and Lloyd's Auctioneers. Now, just a few little things about Professional Partners Education. And if you've missed some of the stuff we've done throughout 2022, and I don't know why I'm carrying this. Look, I got 3 kids and I'm still holding this little glow stick. I have no idea why, but you're going to see it throughout the time, or I can put it down just as much. If you've missed any of our content throughout the year, whether it be my Empire Masterclass show, whether it be this Women in Accounting show that we've done, my Drive Time podcast, my Empire podcast, and probably what we introduced in July, which was our Lunch and Learn. We did a technical session for a lot of different accountants and accounting firms, and that's all on our YouTube channel. So if you call up one of your windows, YouTube, type in Professional Partners Education, and you'll see all of our content there. So there is a plethora of different content there for everyone. It's all free. It's built for you guys. It's providing educational content back to our accounting industry. So we hope you've enjoyed that this year. Today's show, we're going to be talking about attract, engage, retaining. So we're going to talk about attracting, engaging, and retaining top talent. And I know, and probably even a few months ago, we've been talking about this. And every time, I know I caught up with firms last week at different lunches as well. And the topic of people always comes up, and how to do things maybe a little bit differently. And I think that's the great thing about, one of the great things when I was coaching accounting firms, we've got this ability to look at 2 different years, in a calendar year and a financial year. So you've got the ability to sit back, reflect, review what's worked, what hasn't worked, what can I change? And I think that's one of the things I'm going to encourage all of you guys that are online to look at that this year and say, right, if we do a bit of a reflection come later this month or early into 2023 and say, what am I going to change? And that's what today's about, and probably all of my content has been. It's a bit of a passion of mine. People's always been a bit of a passion when I've led organizations, and I love talking about it. So what we're going to talk about today is something a little bit different. We're going to talk about an employee value proposition. Some of you may not have heard that. Even last week when I was with a few firms in the city, having a few drinks again. You know, I think I'm an alcoholic, but I'm not. But I do like a drink. Again, EVP is not something that a lot of people have heard of. So we're going to talk about what an EVP is. We're going to talk about why have one, the importance of having one. We'll give you some tips of how you can define that. We'll go into a few things as well about, I'm calling about amplify the human experience. So how you can actually look at redesigning that for the new calendar year as well, and how you can get people to maybe think about the new way that they may wish to perform in 2023. So for all of our leaders out there, or our aspiring leaders out there, this is going to be fantastic for you guys. I have a chat bar down there. If you've got any questions throughout the next 50 minutes, please throw any questions in there. I'll moderate that and I'll throw that back to our special guest. Let me go to our special guest. Now, I met Alicia. When did we meet? Was that in March this year at one of it was Wholesale Investor, wasn't it?
Yep. I think at their emergence event.
Yeah, correct. So isn't it hard to believe that was like March and now we're in December, which is ridiculous. And we've had a couple of false starts here as well. So look, I'm just going to quickly go through this. So Alicia's a bit of a maverick in the industry, challenging probably the traditional approach. And this is why this is fantastic for our accounting industry, and the traditional approach to people and the people strategy. So we're going to bring some, I call it the data, the science, human behaviors. We're going to bring all of that into the next 45 to 50 minutes. And I'm going to ideally ask questions where Alicia's going to share some stories, some things that she's working with, because she's working with accounting firms right now. So some of the key things that she's doing with firms around the EVP stuff as well, that hopefully you guys can get, and then hopefully again provide you with information, strategies that will inspire you for 2023. So how's that for an intro? How are you, Alicia?
Yeah, very good.
We can bottle that and we can post that out.
Yeah, exactly right.
So let's start with you. So just to give everybody a little bit of everyone online, tell us a little bit about you and tell us what you've been doing and how you got to be in this space.
Yeah, sure. So look, I always describe myself as someone who's really interested in human behavior. And really for us as a business, that's where we specialize, and we focus on the human element, to your language, that human element around the business component. So I've had a long career in HR, and I would call it corporate HR. And then once I had little people in my life, once I had kids, didn't want to go back to corporate world and started my own business, doing some consulting work. But I found very quickly the typical common issue every business has, and I would say every manager has, is really how do I do this? I mean, this isn't a new question. How do I engage my talent? How do I attract them and bring them into my team? How do I keep them? How do I manage really difficult staff? How do I have courageous conversations? All of these things that we just are not taught at school, we're not taught at uni. If you've even been privileged enough to do an MBA, their people management components are really light on. And nobody ever really explains to you, well, why do people in my team, why do they all behave differently? Why has everyone got different needs? Why are they all coming at me from different angles? So we really try and help people demystify that human element through psychometrics. And we use a tool called Predictive Index, amongst other tools that we use in our business, to really help people navigate this very, very complicated landscape with a little bit more data. And I think that's probably why I've done really well in industries like IT and accounting, and it's typically people who want more data around their people, and that's the element that we bring to organizations, which is really powerful.
Yeah, well said. And I can remember when I did it as well. I think I was in Sydney that time, and yeah, it's always fascinated me. And I think you're right. The data side is something that's sort of missed from our industry a little bit. And but having said that, being probably all of our guests are all analytically driven, the data and the science behind that, I think, is critical. So it's something that I don't believe we've had in the past, to be able to understand all of that. And yeah, there's all sorts of different ways that we can look at that as well. So it's great to be able to try and break that down as much as we can and delve into it today. So thanks for that little intro. Let's start with the EVP, the employee value proposition. Tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, so it's definitely something that's, I guess, increased in popularity. And we saw really big companies like your Netflix and your Canvas and the Atlassians, they really dived into the whole employee value proposition space really quickly. And that sort of expanded heavily over the last 3 years. Ultimately, an employee value proposition is exactly that. It's what is the value proposition for employees? We often have that customer value proposition. Why should somebody buy from you? Should they, use your services or products? What's the value proposition? Think of it the same lens for an employee. If they're looking at 5 or 6 places to work, what makes you unique? And companies love to flog, oh, we're a great culture. Every single person I've ever met loves to say that about their business. And I say, why? It's really that simple. What is the why? What is your answer to why? Oh, we have great people. Okay, so does everyone else next door. What else? And it's going why with the company until we really get to the core of the organization, the culture, the values, but also the experience someone will have when they join your organization, and trying to find what does make you unique. And we've got to do that in a really authentic way. But think of that employee value proposition as why someone would work for you, that story that you get to tell staff about the experience that they're going to have. And what's that? We also refer to it as this golden handshake deal for a staff member, what to join, but also to keep you there long term. What are those things that you should expect in terms of this way, but also this way? How are you expected to show up, and how are you expected to behave, and what are the values? But what are the programs that you can be involved in? And and participate, but also give back to. It is absolutely a two-way relationship is what an EVP is.
Yeah, I think and I suppose given the industry we're in, you know, or the industry that I've been in for a very long time, and we'll break down some of the stuff you're doing with some firms shortly. We know, and I know there could be some employees on this as well, but it's an employee-led market. We know all of you listening, if you're owners of accounting firms, and looking at the list before, there's quite a few that are directors and partners in firms on this. You know how important it is to, again, where we're in this millennials type of situation where engagement is a big word that gets thrown up, and we know that's important. Again, if you're doing some fantastic things, you need to tell people. And I think you used a great example just before. We're very good at telling from a marketing point of view to attract a customer or a client our way, but are we just as good at as attracting a team member? And they're the things I feel we need to get better at, because again, and I hear all the time from firms that I'm with, you know, people are jumping for not even a small amount of money or a large amount of money. They're just jumping and they're going from one. But what, again, I don't know if anyone's done the exercise on what it costs you when you lose a person. I know we did this quite a while ago, and it's an astronomical cost, not just in dollar time, but also time. We know firms, it's all about time. So those are the sorts of things, again, that hopefully, again, we can trigger you, and even some of the words that Alicia just used then trigger you to say, right, what do I need to start doing?
Because not a lot of people, it's really interesting after all the years I've done this, and you sit down and you do that calculation with people and they go, oh yeah, it's going to cost me 70 grand, 100 grand, 150 grand. Do they ever make change? So it doesn't even matter sometimes how much data, facts, and evidence you put in front of somebody. Some people are never going to truly value people. And that comes down to your ethics and your values. Some people go, I need people to get my job, my business to be where it's at. And then some people view people as an accelerator, right? And anybody who's ever worked in a really amazing team knows the difference between just getting the job done and really being able to accelerate a business. And that key ingredient is people. Without a shadow of a doubt, it is always people that is that greatest change for an organization to accelerate its growth. Just some people have never really been a part of it, so it's really hard to convince them that it does happen. But ultimately, with this whole space, we would say that the employee value proposition, it has to be congruent. So to your point earlier about, okay, what do we tell our customers why they should join us? Your EVP should be really congruent. And we have like 5 rules around an EVP, and one of them is congruent. So the way that you would talk about your customer landscape, it should be fairly similar. So the things that you take pride in, for example, I've got a client who is all about educating their clients. They've got this huge education element, just about really empowering their clients with more knowledge. So therefore, it made sense when we got to their EVP to take that into, actually, we want to empower and educate our staff, right? So it's what we want to do is take it and make it feel super authentic and super natural to be like, okay, why would we create a totally separate EVP over here when our customer value proposition's over here? We want to make it really congruent. When you make it congruent, it's a lot less work because you just get to do one thing really, really well.
In any other, like that's so what we're going to go through the 5?
Oh yeah, the 5. So look, the other one we want to make sure that we've got on there. So yes, 1, congruent, but simple. So really, and that sort of touches on it. We don't have to write these convoluted EVPs that are like really long-winded and, you know, you're never going to remember. It's like company values. I mean, any company values, we always say stick to 3, 5 at max. Because simple is key. If we overcomplicate things and we make these really long-winded, convoluted things, people are never going to remember it. It's not going to stand out. It's not going to be easy to remember and repeat. So we want to keep this EVP landscape really simple. So we're often trying to narrow down what might be quite complex and create something really simple. And fundamentally, when we've got something simple, we can just get really good at a few things. I don't want you to have a program or programs that are trying to do 25 different things. I just want you to get really good at 3 things. So for example, education, we just want to be really great at educating our staff and making them subject matter experts. Great. That is in itself a whole pillar of your EVP. I can go deep on that rather than trying to go wide on 15 things on health and fitness and connectivity and technology. If I add all these elements, you're never going to do any of them very well. The third thing is it has to be honest. And that's sometimes the hardest one for people to achieve, because often we have these really big aspirations of all the things that we want to be. And this is why when we develop your EVP, it's very staff driven. We put your staff in a room and we ask them what makes your culture unique. We ask them what they value. We ask them what would retain them and keep them and inspire them. And therefore, we get a very honest perspective of the organization. The golden rule for us is EVPs can't be built in the boardroom. And this can be really uncomfortable for some senior executives who are like, it's my business, it's my company, I want to make all. I'm like, yes, because you want control. But ultimately, if we are not allowed to talk to your staff, engage with your staff, get feedback from them, we're not going to come and help you build your EVP because your staff won't be bought into it anyway, and you've designed it. It's like building your customer value proposition and not talking to your customers.
Yes.
Same
Yes.
analogy.
And that's the great part about it. I suppose I've used these as well, so I'm certainly not saying that I haven't done it. And I know we pick up things from going to workshops, or we pick up things by like jumping online and listening to us now. Our people are our greatest assets. We value our people. You know, these are all they're little statements. What makes an EVP different to that?
Yeah, it's really challenging how far you can push the authentic nature of it. And I can go through some examples around examples of EVPs that we've done, because that's often where people go, oh, but what is this EVP? You're talking about this thing and it's really intangible. So think of an EVP as a statement. So for example, we have a retail client and they sell bedding and they're all around the country. Now, when we went out and spoke to people who worked in these stores all around the country, including, you know, sales assistants to store managers, we obviously use predictive index with all of their staff. So one of the things we did is we also profiled all of their high performers, people that were incredibly good at selling bedroom furniture. And the key behavioral trait that they had is they were very good at listening. Now that sounds really odd, maybe. A lot of people think, oh, salespeople, if they're out selling beds, they've got to be quite proactive, and maybe they're really good at connecting and chatting and all these things. And we actually found the inverse. So it was people that were a little bit more reserved, people who were very team orientated, they were not competitive, and they were really calm. So they had this really high patience drive. And what we look at in the behaviors that come off that is that they listen really well. And when we unpacked it further and further, and this took some time, but we really worked out the best salespeople were the ones that just ask questions, tell us what a good night's sleep looks like for you. What have you come in here already researching, wanting to have a look at today? They were great at asking questions and they were great at actually listening. Now, when we then moved into helping them with their employee value proposition, the staff came up with this tagline with, it's not just our customers we value and listen to, which is really powerful because it talks about it's not just how we treat our customers, it's how we treat our staff. And then from there, we build out, typically 3 or 4 pillars about, well, what does valuing you and what does listening to you mean? And that's things about some reward and recognition programs that they have that also touches on development. We also talk about listening, and what does really listening mean? It's about the connection that you have with your manager and the store and all these things. And they've got some health components as well, because they employ lots of young people who are on their feet, and they know that, you know, for them being happy and healthy is really important. So we then have pillars that sit underneath it. But hopefully that's an example where you go, okay, great. It's super authentic. I can't go and take that and give it to another company because it probably wouldn't fit their culture, their values, and what they know makes for really high performing people.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that, because you're right, we tend to focus a little bit more on the customer than maybe the team member, but if you got team member experience right, that would flow down to the customer?
Correct. And it's really interesting when you start to add in like behavioral profiling, and then you add in this EVP component, and you sort of these building blocks of really scientifically mapping out what makes our company successful. It's our customer experience. But why is our customer experience So valuable because our employees live behaviors and values that we want to replicate in future hires.
Yep.
So once you get this machine operating really well and it's really authentic and it's simple and it's congruent, it becomes easier, right? Instead of us knee jerking to every new trend, they don't have to do that. They go, actually, we're really confident in what we've built here, in the programs that we have, in the way that we treat our employees, in the way our customer experience is set up. So they don't have to knee jerk to all these trends. And I see that all the time when I talk to HR people is they're like, oh, the CEO asked us to introduce this new scheme. They're asking us to introduce this new program and asking us, you can look at those things and be aware and open to those things, but it's having the confidence that like, does this fit into our framework that we know is set up based on what our staff want? Does it fit in? Because some of these programs, yep, it will. And other ones you can say, you know what? This is too much noise and distraction. So again, it comes down to focusing your time, effort, and money on things that will give you a return on investment when it comes to your people.
Okay, brilliant. Now, we touched on 3 before.
Yes.
Can we go back to the other 2?
So the other one is it's got to be unique. So it makes sense that these taglines, or I guess statements around your EVP, they have to be unique to you. They need to sit well with your brand. And you can't steal someone else's, which is really tempting, especially when we sit with our clients and we show them case studies and examples and they go, oh, I like that one. I'm like, you can't have that one. It's not a menu. We've got to build out your own, which is really unique to you. So that 4th element is that it has to be unique. And I also want to make sure it sounds really like your brand. I don't want you to sound like anyone else. So when I pick these up for our clients and we work on it, we also do research in the industry to make sure you don't sound like anyone else. We want it to be really unique for you. And the 5th and the last element is it has to be inspiring. You have to read it and go, ooh, this is interesting. This actually makes me, if I'm their target audience, which is also what we're trying to do, we're trying to go after our target audience. I want to feel inspired by what I'm reading, what I'm listening to, what I'm watching, because if they're doing video content, actually, this sounds like somewhere I want to work because it aligns to who I am and what I value. That's great. We want to attract those people. We also want to detract people that are not a good fit. So like I said, with that bed retailer client of ours, I also wanted people to go, oh, we're not valued and listened to. Like, that's not really inspiring. Great. You're probably not our target audience because you probably don't like listening to other people. Great. Don't apply and work here because you can go work somewhere else. So we want to use it as a magnet to pull people in who feel really inspired by it. And we want to use it as a detractor to people as well. Again, helping you be more efficient with your recruitment strategy. Because often I'll go through, again, those case studies with our clients before we do some work. And they'll look at something that goes, oh, that doesn't resonate with me. And I go, great. You're not their target audience. I don't need it to resonate with you. It is exactly like a customer value proposition. It's the same logic again. Okay. So these things, you can see these 5 rules sit really nicely together to sort of guide you when you're going through this process of developing an EVP.
Yeah, good. So I think the exciting thing about our industry, and there's no doubt it's evolved, and maybe because the lack of people in our industry has forced the way we work a little bit different. And I know there's some really good outsourcing organizations. Obviously, Profit Master is sort of one of the organizations that supports us with these shows. And, you know, we've sort of, the way that firms are now thinking is, right, the call it the number crunching technical aspects. That could be done elsewhere. That could be done offshore. Offshore has become massive in our industry, led because the lack of good people here. So then how do I then, and we started this, funnily enough, it's taken me back to some of the stuff we did in January and February this year, which was around, and a lot of firms in terms of, we all call it added value, but we start talking to clients. And it's about what you were talking about before. Good salespeople are good listeners. That an asking a question, and my kids will hear, they'll say, Dad, you can't say that. It's about asking a question and shutting up. Ask a question, shut up. But it's about listening to what the client's needs are, and then, and again, asking another question. How does it make you feel? And this is the, to all of you guys that are watching this, the let's call it the advisory section. And we've got, I think there's a massive opportunity, whether it be, again, Hall Chadwick, again, is a great supporter of ours. So when you've got the ability to sit down and even ask a client, what's keeping you awake at night? And there's a few things. Mainly it's money driven. We know that, you know, we might be highly debt driven. We know that we might be struggling from a cash flow point of view. There's a number of different things that are keeping them awake. But by asking good questions, then you can then start to get into that flow of then providing good advice based on what they say. You don't need to understand their industry. You don't need to understand any of that. You just got to ask good questions. And that's the advisory piece that I feel is such a massive opportunity if you can understand that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think we are looking at probably the fastest evolution of the workplace we've ever seen. I mean, even 10 years ago, we were talking about the future of work and the war for talent. I have PowerPoints from 10 years ago that had that on there. So this isn't, but what we're seeing is the pandemic actually forced the hands of organizations to look totally different at remote working, which again, for companies decades ago, they were doing because they're like, sure. But a big chunk of organizations weren't comfortable with it because if you're not in front of me, you're not productive, you're not working. That authoritarian leadership style was very prevalent. But we're seeing that this has caused this huge shift. It's caused we're referring to it as the Great Resignation, turned the Great Reflection, turned Great Reinvention. We've got these periods that we've been through very, very quickly. And so it's, in many senses, it's been a real positive because it's been this big awakening of actually your employees are adults. I always say this to my staff, you employ adults. That's the wonderful thing about working in organizations. We don't work with kids, we work with adults, and we need to really view them that way. But the workplace has gotten more complex because of it. And managers are like, oh my God, I'm just not feeling prepared. I got all these pressures. Some people are navigating 5 different age groups. They're managing baby boomers all the way down to these Gen Z. I don't even know what we're up to at the moment. They all have different expectations. They have different needs, but guess what? All people do. So I think if we start to look back at the real commonality of, well, what does everyone in your team need? What do people in your business need? And again, this is why things like psychometrics and using tools really help us get to the core of who people are and what their needs are. We can start to map your team. We can start to map your strategy. We can start to look at, do we have the right people to execute on this strategy? And we can see people for the value they bring, the roles that they play. And yes, we can look to automate, digitize, offshore, those 3 things. Yes, so that those people that you have, those high value people who have all been asking for salary increases, which is a whole separate topic, we need them to work on high value items, right? Which is client facing work, which is having those conversations, critical thinking, decision making, problem solving, all of these things we cannot automate and offshore. So the value of the human goes up, and it will continue to go up because we're going to see the monotonous, mundane things getting automated, digitized, those things. Unfortunately, we don't really have anything set up to bridge that gap. And a lot of the research data from Deloitte and KPMG would indicate that organizations, 78% of organizations are facing a skill gap shortage. We don't have the right skills within our organization to achieve our strategy. And this will probably be one of the largest things that many organizations are going to have to navigate through. It used to be, you could put a job ad up and go, I need a chief product officer. I need a head of this. Good luck finding that person in this market. Because we're facing what's referred to as the triple squeeze. So you can hear it here first, triple squeeze. It's not mine. It's something that's been out for a while, but it's looking at rising inflation, which is obviously you guys are all very aware of. The scarcity of talent, which is here in Australia and actually around the world, is a huge issue. And then global supply issues, right? So those things are the triple squeeze that are really impacting businesses. That's really all we're talking to our clients about, is these 3 things are really all coming at the same time. And 2023, we'll just see that get even more intense in terms of the economy.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. I think one of the messages that you just mentioned that resonated with me was, and I think you said we're not even going to touch on that one today, or we're not even going to go there, which was salary increases.
Yeah.
And you're right,
it's a whole hour.
Yeah,
so yes, we can talk about it, but it's a whole topic. Yeah.
And you've only got to turn on the TV today and, like airport strikes because of pay disputes, and there's this and nurses walking off because of pay disputes. Again, if you could redefine that as a part of your strategy to the people that are watching here and say, right, how do I, yes, you can attract, but it's also redeploying talent to new areas if you know strengths. And that's probably what the science tells you, isn't it? And the data will tell you based on that, how do you then move people to a higher value of work, which means you can charge more, which means you can pay them.
Yes, correct. But I can't pay you more money to do the same job you're doing today because everything else around me has gotten more expensive. So as business owners, founders, leaders of our organization, we see that, right?
Yes.
We see our bottom line. We see those things. Staff don't, right? And it's also not their responsibility to. What we need to do is to reshift the conversation. One thing I'll mention before I go into that is pay transparency is going to become potentially a part of legislation in Australia next year. So if you look at sort of Fair Work Act and what's going to come forward is they're going to remove clauses around confidentiality, right? That won't be allowed to legally be in place anymore. And this is to protect lots of different demographics, but ultimately pay transparency may come into play. Now, if pay transparency comes into play for everyone here on this call, my question to you is, what would that mean for you? Have you got two people doing the exact same job on different pay scales? And yes, you and I both know why that is, because there's often logic that has occurred for whatever reason. That is going to absolutely be a total disaster for a lot of organizations, and they're going to need to think about that proactively, because they're going to need to bump people up. They're going to have to really operate at a different level when it comes to salary. One of the things they're going to have to think about is skill redeployment. Like, how do I maximize you? If I've got to now bump you up to get you on equal pay to someone else, how is your role different? What are those things I need to, what are the levers I can pull? But also, how can I, instead of just talking about salary all the time, how can I look at that total remuneration package? Because ultimately, when I talk to staff, I say to them, look, if you push too hard for this big increase and you jump ship and you go for another 30K job, just be aware you will be the first person to lose your job. If any type of crisis happens, I've worked in HR long enough to know it's last in, first out. Who's highest paid in their job bracket? They're the first to go. So you absolutely, it might be uncomfortable for me to tell you this, but you'll be the first to go. So are you wanting to put yourself at risk? Because we know job security is really high up on the statistical data of what people are wanting. Don't put yourself at risk by overinflating yourself. Yes, they're willing to pay it, but the question is, for how long are they willing to pay that salary? So we need to get creative with salary structures. We need to be thinking about that total remuneration package, and how can we, yes, maybe look at sign-on bonuses, but targeting that sign-on bonus to development programs. And that's one of the creative levers we've pulled with a lot of our clients this year to say, great, you want to pull in this heavy hitter? Let's look at a $10,000 allocation to a 12-month program we're now going to put you on. Now, some people will go, oh no, I want the 10 grand cash. Well, do you? And are you the right person? Or would you value a 12-month development program? Like, and what we're seeing is people are absolutely saying yes. And that's the difference in those offers. It's not just the base. It's what's my experience, and also my worth will be greater in 12 months if I go through this program. So it's creative solutions to problems that we are going to face and we are facing. And that's what we've really got to have our eyes and ears open to, is how can we navigate through this landscape, which is getting really complicated.
Yeah, brilliant. And what I love about that is it's a proactive approach, as opposed to, it's unfortunate that our industry is what it is, but a lot of it is looking back. So it tends to be reactive. And, I've often been in positions where if we're coaching a particular firm and it'll be a people problem, and no disrespect to anyone online that says this, but I've always called it out and said it's not the right approach. And Alicia, you might have a different opinion on this as well. But someone goes and asks for a pay rise, and the reply will be, well, why don't you go away and tell me why you're worth that much? Why don't you come back and tell me what your plan is to become more valuable for this business for me to pay you that? I'll guarantee you they won't do it. Therefore, they're already going, oh, I'm going to start looking. So then we know how many jobs are out there. So this is my comment to that is, this is your opinion again, or sorry, this is your strategy to say, How can I be more proactive in
Mm,
be collaborative in that and working out what's important? If it's a sign-on, how can it be used for education? We know this industry is massive on education, and we know
mm,
education provides the ability to future earnings, security. Brilliant,
mm.
brilliant.
Yeah, and I think often that skill, I mean, we use our own program, it's a bit of a creative solution for us. We use our own program as that sign-on bonus for companies. So we say, great, what you can use us as your funnel to say every person that you employ at a particular level, you can sign them onto our Manage with Confidence program or our Lead with Confidence program, and you're going to feed them through to us. And we're always going to be here. And every quarter, you're going to send in those new people, and they're all going to go through a similar program. And we have statistics around our program that no one resigns. No one has ever resigned during our program. So that is actually saying not only, yes, I might spend X amount of money to join the program, but I'm locking this person in because they're so engaged, so motivated. They're getting so much value from a program over 12 months. It's also locking them in, but not because we're saying here's a lock-in contract, which, by the way, people do not like,
No.
but just the sheer results of putting someone through a program that's so motivating and inspiring that they stay with the business because they're getting to use their skills in action. That's a win-win, right? And I think, to your point, it is thinking about things a little bit more proactively and openly talking to staff. And this is often the missing element, is we think all the answers are going to happen here today on this call and that we're going to come up with a solution. The reality is you have to have proactive conversations with your staff regularly to say, what's driving and motivating you? How are things going at the moment? How can we best support you? Where do you want to be in the next 3 to 6 months? What are some of the skills that you want to develop? What are you working on? If we have those conversations more regularly, we're going to be able to proactively address any red flags, right? Oh, sounds like you're saving for a new house. What are those things? Like, great, now I've worked out there's a bit of a financial puller here. How can I support you with that? Is that helping you introduce you to a mortgage broker? It doesn't mean I'm going to help you fund your mortgage, but can I help you get a financial plan or whatever that may be from a staff's perspective? I know you're all in the finance space, but yeah, what are those things I can do proactively to support my staff at their life stage, knowing that they're all at different life stages?
Yeah, brilliant. And this is, again, I open the show with this. This is the opportunity that exists for all of you in terms of your reflect of the last 6 months and maybe a proactive look at how that could change for the next 6 months. Because you're right, if you sat down with all of your team members, yeah, and it's great to have big Christmas parties and go out and get on the red wine as I am right now, but it's very different when you have that conversation one-on-one and talk to them about what's important to them. And we know there's squeezes, another interest rate rise, 8 in a row. We know young people could have taken out massive mortgages, and that's putting a squeeze on their financial with an extra, whatever it may be, a month to find. We've got Christmas coming up. It's a great conversation starter, isn't it?
And I think the biggest challenge when we do talk to managers about this, and especially I see this when I'm working with sort of CEO level, they're like, great, we're going to make sure that all of our managers go out and have these development conversations. And then we go and talk to the managers and they're like, I don't know how to have this conversation. Great. I'm so appreciative that you actually told me that you don't know how to do this, and that you go in and say, how are you? How are things? What do you need? I'm like, okay, we need to expand beyond those 3 questions. Let's give you a bit of structure. Like most accountants need a little bit more structure, as do my clients in lots of industries, whether you're in construction, right? Or you're in, I was out with a farming client last week in Ballarat, right? I'm dealing with farmers who have to have these conversations with their team members. How can we have better development planning conversations? So we now even run a program that's basically, that's all we do, is we train managers in how to have development conversations ongoing, not just once a year, because by the way, that so totally does not cut it anymore. How do we have these ongoing conversations? Because if we're doing that on an ongoing basis, we can ask different questions over time. We can start to really understand our staff. We can build trust. We can make them feel connected. We can be clearly communicating what's going on in the organization more regularly. Because a lot of these challenges come down to things not being communicated or shared, or, oh, we didn't know that that's going on. And then, oh, I'm surprised because they're asking for a pay rise.
Yep.
Oh, didn't you know they've spent 12 months looking for a house? Oh, I didn't know that because I never asked. But nowadays we do have to get a little bit personal with people. We have to know what's going on in their lives if they feel like sharing. But the least we can do is ask those questions in a safe way. But I would say that managers in 2022, and it'll be the same in 2023, they have never received any support or training or development in how to have development planning conversations. So like I said, we run programs now specifically in this space because it's such a gap. We think managers should have learned this skill by now, but it's not. It's so not their fault, because organizations just expect that you're a manager, go and do this. Here's a form, go and fill it out. It's actually more complicated than that.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot more complicated than that. And there's a difference between, leading and managing. We spoke about that on a show last month, I think. So true. So true. Just conscious of time. So just to get to, let's talk about the sort of one of the topics we spoke about earlier, and that was, let's call it the human experience. What does that look like in terms of redesigning work to amplify that human experience for 2023?
I mean, we're definitely seeing the introduction of what we call hyper-personalization of the workplace. Hyper-personalization. There you go. There's a new long word for you. Oh, okay. I look like I'm on The Bachelor with this mug. So they can never tell how much I've been drinking. It is water. Hyper-personalization. So think about it from a customer's perspective. This has been around for a long time. You start searching something online. Now your Instagram feed is full of it. You go onto Netflix, and when you log in and your partner logs in, you both see different things. This is hyper-personalization. In the workplace, we will see this slowly be incorporated, which means we can look at you as an individual and we can design your experience based on you, not as a blanket approach, which you will see a lot of HR people trying to do these blanket approaches of, yes, we do need some structure and stability. Like with our EVP, we've got to have some pillars, right? We've got to have some key things we know we're known for and we're experts at and we're so good at. But let's look at the training and development. For example, we want to really focus on employee development and training and make them subject matter experts. That might be a pillar. Your experience in that journey might look different to your colleagues. That is hyper-personalization. It's not everybody does this exact thing in this exact order. It's that we have menus of options that we can allow you access to based on your needs, based on you working with your manager, that yes, you can tap into those things, but at the time that suits you, in a way that suits you, and that might look different, right? So your ways of working will be different. So I think we need to treat people as individuals. That's going to be the key message, is that yes, create some architecture, right? We need architecture and structure, and everyone needs that. But I would say the individual's journey needs to be navigated and guided through the relationship with their manager to say, here's how we're going to get you where you need to go based on the things we have available.
Yeah, I like that, because I agree. Like, it doesn't need to be a blanket approach, and I think we've sort of adopted that in the past as well. Just when it comes to training, everyone goes to the same training course. Everyone's at different levels, so it's a very, I agree, it can easily be structured but then be personalized.
Yes, and I think their learning goals need to look different. So we might put you through the same program, maybe at a different point in time, but I can sit with the manager and you and whatever, and we can talk about what are your learning outcomes. Your learning outcomes might look different to the person next to you. So we need to train managers, and this is a huge part of why we exist at Red Wolf Group, is developing managers in conversations. Because if we, like a development conversation, also now you're going to go on a 12-month program, or you're going to go on a one-day seminar. How many times have we sent our people on a one-day course and have no idea what they learned at the end?
Correct.
Oh my God, so many times. So setting that expectation to say, hey, let's sit down before you go off and do this one-day session or this, whatever you're doing. Let's talk about what you'd love to get out of it. Like, what are you hoping? Like, let's talk about that optimistic future. What would you like to get out of it? Then let's talk about what you did get out of it. Let's talk about the application of what you learned. Let's also look at the third thing we would look at is, what is the piece of information that you can share with your colleagues?
Yes.
So how can you bring that knowledge back to the team? And it might just be one thing, right? But if I can get one piece of really good insight into the team, and you can talk to your team in our weekly catch up about it, great. I can train managers how to do that, right? That's the secret sauce to a lot of this, is getting managers to feel confident to be able to do this versus just in theoretic concept. Oh yeah, I should probably spend more time talking to my people. Let's have those conversations with a bit more purpose.
Yeah, I love it, because you use right at the start, we rewind maybe 40 minutes, you use things that went into my head around educating and empowering. Now, there's a classic example of how someone could be educated and also be empowered by having those conversations about before you go, what they want to get out of it. And more importantly, how are you going to present that to the rest of your team when you come back? Because again, it's just a simple conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's giving people the structure and support around, hey, here's how we can maximize your training budget that you're going to get given, because it's very easy to send people on courses, but we know that that's about 10% of people's development.
Yep.
It's on the 70-20-10 model, that 10% is really going to a training session, getting that formal training. The other 20% is really exposure. So it's exposure to new ideas, concepts, getting mentored, really learning from others. And 70% of it is that experience on the job. It's taking my 10% of knowledge and doing it on the job day to day, learning about it, having experiences with that skill set to develop my confidence in it. But unfortunately, managers and staff, by the way, they're like, oh, I didn't get any development this year. You're like, you didn't go. I actually had this a few months ago with a client. We did an engagement survey with them, and they in general scored really low on this score, which is around learning and development. I feel I get the learning and development I need. They scored low, but the question they scored incredibly high on was, I feel I learned and developed new skills that will help me for the future. They scored like in the 90s. And so I sat with the staff, I was like, so you feel like you're getting really practical, tangible experience on the job, right? Because it's a fast growing company, very innovative. You're on the ground learning and getting these experiences. Yes, because you scored that like bloody 5 out of 5. But you don't feel like you're getting any formal learning and development. Tell me more about that. And they're like, yeah, we didn't go on any courses this year. I'm like, you are on a course every day and it's called life. And you're getting more experience on the job than if I put you on a 1-day training course. So, and they're like, oh yeah. And we unpacked it a bit, and they're like, oh, actually, we've had heaps of development this year. I'm like, yes, you have. Like, we just got to re-educate you on what development looks like. It's not just going to a training course.
Yes.
And sitting in a seminar. That is not the entirety of your learning and development journey. So it's just funny. And again, you'll see this happen a lot with a younger generation. They just don't understand, because they're just so stuck in like, oh, this is development. I have to go to a training course. And if I haven't spent my $1,000 training budget, I'm not being developed.
Yep. So true. So true. So do you think that's if we talk about, let's say, ways to get people to perform differently, better, what could we start working on or rethink in terms of a strategy for 2023 in terms of the way people perform work and what they can work on?
I mean, that's just such a huge area. I mean, one of the steps that we take with our clients when they're looking at, okay, how do I maximize? I mean, we refer to as, how do we optimize your talent? So that's technically my job title is I'm a talent optimizer. So we look at how do we maximize human behavior and performance at work, like you would a professional athlete. And I've got some coaches that work for me who are ex-Olympic athlete coaches who've gone into human behavioral science. And what we know is that athletes know their formula. They work with nutrition people. They work with their sports coach. They work with their mental coach who will help with mindset components. They'll have really structured routines. They have this formula to optimize their performance. And that's really common in sport. When it comes to work, when we ask staff, and we do this in workshops, we ask staff, what's your formula? How do I optimize your performance? They look at me like, I have no idea. I don't know. And so once we start to really sit with an individual, yes, we'll put you through a predictive index, because I need to work out what drives and motivates you. What are the levers I can pull? What are your strengths? Where are you best suited? Should I put you out front talking and building relationships with customers and meeting new people? Or are you the person that I take alongside with that person who's going to ask the powerful questions and listen? And let's talk about how we build you up to be the best person of you, but also what's your best position on the field. And we can do that when we sort of map you into these quadrants and say, where are you best suited to execute on a strategy? How do we maximize your strengths? And where do we know not to put you? Because I can also work out what is the worst place on the planet I can put you. And by the way, in companies, we do this inadvertently all the time. We put people in roles that they are never going to be successful in. And it causes disengagement. They lack motivation and then they exit. So we can use a bit of science and data to make sure that we can get you into the right role. But then we can sit down and have conversations around your skill and your capability, your aspirations, your motivation. We can also surround that with another layer, which is software and technology. And this is where I'm working with some of my clients next year is how do we wrap staff in software and technology to optimize them? How do I reduce any repetitive work that they have? How do I make sure that they're using the best systems and technologies around them? Because if we can surround you with technology and really wrap you up, then what we can do is that all of the value you provide is through your interactions, through your problem solving, through critical thinking, through your relationship skills. I can then double down on those things and I can automate and use technology for the other parts that are mundane. And this is where we will see companies evolve into over the next year is really how do we optimize the individual, then wrapping that and looking at the team that they're in. How do we align the team to the strategy? And a lot of that's done through data. I mean, we do all of that through predictive index and other tools to really look at the capabilities in your team to maximize performance.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Now, I want to pause for a second. If you've got any questions, please drop them into the Q&A. It's probably easier into the Q&A rather than the chat. So if you've got any questions you'd like to ask Alicia, if anything, maybe that you're doing, maybe something that you've done, maybe something that's worked, maybe something that hasn't worked, please throw it in there. We've got the next 5 minutes or so to make sure we cover off any questions you may have. While we're waiting for any questions to come through, Alicia, maybe is there a, and I know, again, not a lot of time, but is there a story that maybe, or an example you can maybe give us to a firm you've been working with in the accounting industry and maybe share where their journey started and maybe where they're heading?
Yeah, look, absolutely. No, it's fine. What I would suggest for anybody who's still on the line, for those of you probably going, why does she keep saying psychometrics and predictive index and what is all this data? If you go to our website, if you go to redwolfgroup.com.au, you will be able to take your predictive index for free. It's one of the things that we offer on our website. And you can take it. It only takes 5 minutes. And then you get sent back a report that really looks at what drives and motivates you. Like Paul took it when I was at a conference with him. And it really does look at your preferred ways of working. It looks at your strengths. It looks at how you communicate, how you approach decisions, how you make risk. It looks at all of these parts of you at work. So that's like what I always suggest to people is go and try it, go and have a look. We'll send you your results, like no issue with that at all. Paul, in terms of questions, in terms of clients I've helped in this space, oh, look, I mean, we've worked with even some law firms that we worked with. Actually, we worked with a really small little law firm up in the Northern Territory. They only had about 6 staff. And for them, they wanted to be a bit of a leader in that law practice space. And in fact, they already were. But all of their language when they were going out to the universities, trying to attract these young people to stay in the Northern Territory, which is a real big challenge because they want to go to the big cities and get their law firm jobs. They just couldn't attract them to stay. So we really sat with them and we actually spent time with not only their existing staff, but staff that used to work for them. And we got a real good understanding of the culture, the values, what made that organization really unique. And they developed, and we worked with them to develop their employee value proposition, which we now, I'm pretty sure off the top of my head, it was Be the Difference with Us.
Okay.
And in fact, they are really different. Like the founder is quite radical. He's not what I'd call a typical lawyer. He's quite innovative in the way that he thinks about law and about the impact that he can have in the community. And they do a huge amount of give back in the region. They were able to get clear on that. And we've been able to work with them on a lot of their branding and their employee branding and take that to unis, so that they can go out and say, hey, here's who we are. And for them, they've been able to absolutely attract higher quality candidates that typically would have gone to Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne. They're like, hey, I want to do 2 years here, right? And that's often what they're asking for. I want to commit to a 2-year placement. Post graduating, I'm going to get my hands dirty in this law practice and really, really get some tangible skills. And for them, that's fantastic return on investment. Is great. We got clear on who we are. Now we can talk about who we are. We can go to these unis, we can get up and speak, and we've got some great branding, but we're clear and authentic. So that's been really, really important for them to attract graduates, because that's a big part of what they're doing. But that would apply if they were trying to hire a senior person as well. At least they've got really clear on who they are.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that, actually. I actually really love that. And I think, again, hopefully that can resonate, because you're right. It's no different to whether it's legal or whether it's accounting or whether it's sort of finance. Similar. Same, different, as we say.
Yeah. And look, we're doing some work with Bell Partners in January this year, so accounting firm, and we're actually working with one of their actual small offices out in Norwest. So I've been working with them for years using predictive index. There's only about 12 of them in that practice in Norwest. And obviously they're a part of a big franchise, right? Or a bigger group. Obviously Bell Partners is huge. But they want to know, well, why would people come and work for us here in Norwest, right? And they have an amazing culture. But typical accountants, you're not very good at promoting yourselves. Very humble, very, I don't want to be showy. It's just, we are who we are, and maybe you'll come and work for us. Now that's really hard in this landscape. So again, we've already started doing some work, getting some stories from their existing staff, but also their old staff. Like, we're not afraid to talk to people that used to work for you. Why did you stay for the amount of time you did? What did you love about working for them? You're now somewhere else. How would you compare them?
Yeah.
Great. Sometimes people who've left you have really good insight into all of the wonderful things that you did have. And they can give you feedback on, oh, if you were to change anything, what would it be? Oh, great. Let's take that in as well. Let's incorporate that. So we're going to go on that journey with them, and we're going to do hopefully some video content as well, because they use recruiters, and it's hard when you use recruiters because someone else is talking about your business for you. And we want to control the dialogue. And the best way to do that is through some videos with staff and employee interviews. And we run Red Wolf Productions. So we have a team that will go out and film and put videos together. But again, it's very authentic, back to that brand of the message that we want.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, to everyone, I just threw the website in the chat bar. So copy and paste that, throw it into your browser, have a look at it, take the little test, I suppose, that I took. It was, I think when I don't know if it was you that I spoke to or not, but after that, certainly I wasn't too surprised with what I was, the title I was given, I suppose. Is that what you'd call it?
Oh, look, we put you in a suburb, yes, but your results are super unique to you. So that's what we love about PI is, yes, you get put in a suburb with lots of other people. I think you're a persuader, off the top of my head. But your results are very unique to you. So only you kind of get your results, which is awesome, right? It's really unique. Yeah,
good. So look, if you've got the opportunity, go on ahead and do that. Check out anything else. Alicia's on LinkedIn as well. What's the best way to contact you if anyone wants to contact you and talk about EVPs?
LinkedIn or our website. You can always reach out, and I'm usually the person that replies. So that's me.
Good. I got a question. That was really insightful. Thank you, Emma. That was really, really nice to hear that. What do you know? We're done.
It flies past.
That's exactly right. Just like that. Look, always fantastic chatting, and thank you. I know we've had a couple of false starts this year, but Alicia, thanks for joining us today. Again, the little, and hopefully to all of you, because we've gone through a fair bit here. So once this goes into post-production and goes back on our YouTube channel, go and have a look at it, talk to the team. These are the sorts of things that you've got the ability to review and look at the sorts of things that Alicia spoke about. And you might go, right, how do I get a little bit more refined on that? Jump onto the website, go and do the profile, have a look at the PI yourself and work out where you fit, and then have that conversation with Alicia to say, is this something I want to do so I can attract, engage, and retain my people as we move into 2023. So thank you, Alicia. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It is absolutely my pleasure. To all of you that are online and supported us in 2022, thank you. It's been an enormous year with Professional Partners Education and Hall Chadwick. We've had an enormous year, and we've done some fairly cool things. We're looking forward to bringing them to you in 2023. So until we see you in 2023, have a safe and happy Christmas. Have a fantastic new year, or a break if you're having one with your family. And we're signing off until we see you next year. Thanks again. See you then. Thanks, everyone. See you. Bye.